good evening or good day, wherever you are. My name is Charlene Margot, and I'm founder of the Parent Education Series, now brought to you by nonprofit The Parent Venture. We are delighted to have a very special event for you tonight. This is our first film event, My Body to Love, Arjun's Story. And this is a really timely topic. We're going to be talking about sexuality and youth coming into their sexuality. So again, I really appreciate you all being here, and we do want to hear from you in the course of this event. Please take it away, Preeti.
Thank you so much, Charlene and Parent Venture, for this event. I'm so excited that everyone is here today. Thank you for coming. I'm just going to share my screen. So I wanted to take a moment to tell you about the My Body to Love project. Before I get into that, I'm actually going to just show you a picture of what really is my inspiration for this project. These are my two sweet boys, Shon and Amo, ages 11 and 8. And as Charlene said, just seeing kind of what young people around me were going through, being really shaken by the mental health crisis, I felt drawn to do something about it. I've kind of become known for making short documentary films. I mean, my specialization is short documentary films and using personal stories to really crush stereotypes, amplify diverse voices, and ultimately, hopefully, create social change. And so the My Body to Love project really, what our goal is to create short documentary films, personal stories, told as confessionals from young adults, recalling moments from their adolescence, from their teenage years, their experiences with sex, sexuality, coming into their identity, and engaging with the community, sharing those stories with the community. And, I have seen that the power of personal stories, they can touch hearts and minds in ways that facts and figures are not able to. And then, propelling people, with these stories to really think about their own relationships with the teenagers in their lives, and maybe, learn new ways to support them as they're going through puberty and adolescence. This is art by Leah Hay. She's doing animation for our films. And, just again, a little bit more about My Body to Love, kind of what we're trying to do with these films. All the research has shown that open conversations about sex and sexuality and comprehensive sex ed, they have this amazing range of benefits for young people. They prevent sexual abuse and bullying. They help young people develop healthier relationships with themselves and others, healthier mental and physical relationships. They've been shown to delay sexual initiation and reduce unintended pregnancies. And these are just the tip of the iceberg. In my work, I always look to partners, organizations that work deep in the space, and Health connected me to Arjun and Vanessa, actually, and Charlene. So I have so much, and Charlene and Deb. So, it's because of these amazing partners who have helped me kind of find storytellers, but also make sure that the storytelling and the arcs of my stories are important to the movement, are in sync with the movement, and helping me ensure, keeping boundaries and privacy, and other things as we are, approaching people to tell these stories. So the film, the first episode of My Body to Love actually consists of 4 stories. Arjun's is the first story in this episode. And then the others that follow are Dee's story, Katie's story, and Cynthia's story. So I hope, I will be partnering with Parent Venture for the next 2 stories, both Dee and Katie. And I hope after this, you will join us to watch those films as well. We have got support from PBS KVIE for the My Body to Love episode, and we're hoping for a premiere in 2024. So we're also producing subsequent episodes, and the idea is to keep producing episodes and then have these community engagement events, as we go. So yeah, that's the design of the films, as I was saying, is to be watched in community, accompanied by best practices and a sharing circle, so that the audience members have the opportunity to watch the films and then reflect on them and bring their perspectives into the conversation. So please, please, after you watch Arjun's film, do give us your thoughts, comments, questions. Yes, we would love to hear what you think and hear your stories. So yes, please stay in touch. I'm excited to hear about, send me any comments, ideas, notes that you have from the film. This is my email address, and please subscribe to our mailing list so you can, we can tell you about more screenings and events. Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti. So, Preeti, shall we go ahead and share the film?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just want everyone to know, we really wanted to set the context today. So after the film, Vanessa Callum is going to join us to really set the stage and talk to us about sexuality and sex education from her professional perspective. So that's how it's going to roll. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A. We're going to have basically an open discussion with today's panelists. And also, we really want to hear from you. So get your questions ready, everybody. I've seen this film a handful of times and it gives me chills every time, Preeti. It's so beautiful. Any comments from you before we move on to Vanessa?
I mean, I think Arjun, thank you for sharing that story with us. Everybody, I've shared it with so many people now, and there haven't been many dry eyes in those rooms. So yeah, I think your story is just such an inspiration to young people and their parents to really, be authentic and be their true selves and find their community. So thank you.
All right. So Vanessa, why don't you set the stage with some information about LGBTQ youth and tell us what you think.
Yeah, and before I do, Arjun's going to have a chance to respond, isn't he, from that beautiful film?
I think we should let him. Absolutely.
I'd love to hear your response. I mean, you've probably seen it a lot, Arjun, but I just, after seeing it as a community, what's your response? And then I promise to move on, but I'd just love to give you a little opportunity there, if that's okay.
Thank you, Vanessa. I feel like you maybe saw me unmute. So I just wanted to thank you, Preeti, for creating the film and doing so in a way where I had no idea what the outcome was going to be, and it was even more beautiful than I could have anticipated. I also want to say, yes, I've seen it a couple times now, and this was a unique time for me because it's the first time that I'm watching it in the presence of other people who haven't seen it before, and with my mom present, who is also on this webinar right now. So shout out to my mom and my dad as well, who are both here. Thank you for being here and for your support all these years. Back to you, Vanessa.
Well, thank you very much. It was certainly really moving listening to that parent piece. And I think everybody will really just see your flourishing through that acceptance of your family, and then you were just able to burst out into yourself. And I suppose that's what we're sort of coming from in that angle, speaking to lots of trusted adults now, speaking to loads of parents, and your role in your young person's journey as they explore their own identity, whether that be a sexual identity, whether that be a gender identity, whether that just be a really broad sense of identity. Parents and trusted adults have a really, really vital part to play in that. And you saw how Arjun was feeling disconnected and a little worried and wondering about his place. And as soon as he was essentially outed, really without his consent, but it allowed him then to be a bit more free at the bar mitzvah. But when his dad walked through the door, that sense of dread it was palpable when you told that story, Arjun. And so I just want to impress upon all the parents and trusted adults who are listening and joining with us, that your role in this is just so vital, because you just heard someone's response to somebody who all of a sudden now knew of his identity. So just keep that in the back of your mind while we just work through a few things in terms of identity development and why adolescence is just so vital for that. So I'll just share my screen with everyone. So I wanted just to make the distinction. I'm an educator. I taught high school for many years, and then I began teaching sexual health education. And I spent a long time, 6 years, with Health Connected, an organisation I have only admiration for and thanks for. And we get questions in the classroom. We got questions in the classroom from young people, often talking about gender identity and sexual identity. Sometimes parents and guardians, they'd say, oh, well, it's not really what young people are thinking about. It's just that it's so popular in culture today to talk about it, and they're not really thinking all these, having all these questions. But we know they are, because in the classroom, they ask them. And so I just wanted to establish first with everybody that there is a difference between gender and sex, because sometimes we conflate all of the different identities, and sometimes that just confuses the conversation that you might have with your young person. So I will be going through the difference, but when we're talking about sex or biological sex or sex assigned at birth or natal sex, there's lots of different words for it. We're talking about bodies and hormones and DNA. But when we're talking about gender, we're talking about that sense of self that is gendered. So some people might call themselves a man or a woman or non-binary. And we'll talk about the relationship between those two. Even though they're distinct, they're definitely related. So how then does this identity really present itself during adolescence? Now, there's lots of changes. If you're a parent of an adolescent, you will know that so much change happens during this stage of life. And there's puberty, so there's physical changes, there's emotional changes that come along with the development of the limbic system, which of course the prefrontal cortex is lagging behind. So that limbic system is like in overdrive, but the impulse control, not so much. And then there's the social changes that brings. Then there's the, as Preeti was saying, there's the mental health aspect, which has only been amplified certainly since COVID. And there's sexual development on top of that. So this is all coming at your young people. And if you're the parent of a high schooler, as many of you will, it's still happening. It's not like, oh, well, they have an adult body now, so phew, now we can just go to Noosa or go to a holiday. It's one of those things that's really ongoing. So we're going to focus a little bit just on that sexual piece, because sexual development has a lot to do with some of these identities discussions, because all of a sudden now, due to puberty, young people are capable of arousal, sexual arousal and sexual activity. Their bodies are now flourishing in such a way that makes all that possible. And they have the self-awareness to be attracted to other people. Now, there might have been crushes in the past, but now it's joined with sexual attraction rather than just, oh, I think he's really cute, or he's really kind, or she's really sort of, dramatic and funny. And all of those things are now sort of honing in on the piece of the body that really hasn't been accessed before, which is that sexual attraction, because sex hormones now are really firing along. And so because we have this attraction thing, because we have hormones that really make us as adolescents sensation seeking, and we really like risk, and we love relationships and a bit of turmoil, then our place in the world becomes embroiled in just, it's exciting, but it can be a little bit topsy-turvy as we move through all of this development. And identity is part of placing us in the world. Like, who am I in this space? What do I think of myself? What do other people think of me? Because of adolescents, of course, think that they're on a perpetual stage and everyone's looking at them and watching them and judging them. That's their perception. And so they want to know, like, what am I, so that I can project this image to everybody else, and it's real. So figuring out our place in the world, here's some questions that some young people from the classroom have asked. Am I not female enough if I don't want to have sex or get pregnant like my other friends? Female enough. If you're a gender and you have friends that are the same gender, does that make you gay or lesbian? Interesting, right? Great questions. And I mean, Arjun would see these all the time. I have a stack of them. It's a time in that classroom where young people are asking anonymous questions so they can really be quite honest. If someone is cisgender, that means that their body parts, hormones, and DNA has some alignment with society's view of their gender. So if somebody has female body parts, then they're cisgender if they identify as a woman or a girl. If someone is cisgender but does not have sexual feelings for neither female or male or men, does that make them asexual? If someone was raped and then doesn't have sexual feelings for either sex, does that make them asexual? Or, so there's lots of wondering about that as well. So identity and personal values, and those questions we're talking about a little bit of gender in there, but mainly sexual orientation, asexuality, being gay or being lesbian. So we're going to focus on that. That's our specialty. Sexuality is our specialty. So identity, broader identity, and sexual and gender identity really have a lot to do with personal values. They're enmeshed, like they're sort of squished together. And of course, one of the most important jobs of adolescence is actually figuring out one's own set of personal values, because before then they were just sort of, rolling with the family's set of values. But part of adolescence is really figuring out who you are and what you do value, and whether that's faith and culture or values like education, all that stuff is now coming to the fore. So they're starting to think, well, okay, who am I? And what are my values? And then how does who I am align with these values or not? So it's a pretty big task to do psychosocially. So this is the interesting thing about this whole sort of piece, is that when you get a young person, maybe high school is generally when it starts to happen. Some middle schoolers are there. But that whole abstract thinking is a thing that they have to developmentally enter into. So usually it's around high school. This whole gender identity particularly is difficult for people of my age particularly, because all of a sudden there is potentially an ideological disconnect between the young person and the parent or the trusted adults. Because what postmodernism argues is that the body or biology, so that's biological sex, and gender are completely separate. So they're completely separate. Some people would say not even related to one another. Therefore, the postmodern argument is that people can disassociate their thoughts and feelings from their biology, and giving them the freedom then to choose gender over biology. And so that is a really difficult ideological challenge when you have young people going, yep, that's me, I'm grasping onto that idea. And you have parents and trusted adults and families going, well, ideologically, I see gender and biological sex very tightly related, if not the same. So you can see already how this tension can happen within families. And so my question to people who are listening and engaging with this conversation actively with their young people is you need to sort of sort out your own values, and you need to be gentle about explaining why, whilst listening to the young person and their clarification of their own personal value system. And that is challenging, take it from me, as a parent, because together, we were a team, we were cohesive, come on, you know, join the team. They're branching out into their own identity and seeking their own personal values, and you have a great role in that as a cheerleader. But the time for forcing that young person over to your side has now really changed by guidance and advice and support. So, given that, here's a question that we get. Really, it's a values question. It's not a gender question. It's not a sexual question, particularly because am I gay when I watch gay porn is a great question. This person doesn't have a problem with watching porn. You know, so it's a values question in that this person is like, yeah, I watch gay porn, I'm fine about that. But am I gay when I watch gay porn? And the interesting thing is, well, maybe, but not necessarily, because sometimes people watch gay porn even if they're heterosexual, and yeah, so there's this lovely mishmash in that question of all different things that that person's asking. So this identity, this sense of either general identity, which has goodness knows how many pieces to it, but certainly gender and sexual identity as a part of a person's broader identity, are directly related to security. So how people feel sort of anchored in their world. And this is when that parent piece or that trusted adult piece really comes to play. Great question. I'm going to read this question to you. I have a non-sexual secret girlfriend. I'm a lesbian with unsupportive parents. She and I hate lying to our parents, but we have no choice. I'm scared that if I tell the truth to my parents, they'll practically disown me. How can I keep this relationship without having to lie? And I love this bit because these are our students. If you don't want to answer this, just skip it. I respect that. I love that because it's so honest when they give these anonymous questions, and people ask them very humbly and very, very sort of openly. So this question, you know, it sort of breaks my heart a little bit when we get these questions, because this person really does want to bring in her parents into this conversation. She really wants their support. She wants them to be on her side, but she finds that tension, and so belonging to a family, belonging to a group promotes that security. But if, like this young person, they're feeling the disconnect with their family group, or that, you know, whatever state that family is, because there's many different family structures, they're going to find family elsewhere. And so if you and your family want to be that soft place, then even if your values don't align, like we were talking about before, you need to really work hard to make sure that that young person knows that they are in your family, you're supportive of them. You might not necessarily agree with each other, but you are on their side and you're on their team, and they are most welcome to just feel a part of your family group. Just got another one here, and it's sort of similar. But you can see how this person has analyzed their identity. Now, I can't see that top because I'm screen sharing. Let me just move here. Yeah. As long as I can remember, for most of my life, I've had attractions for the other gender. But starting a few years ago, I've had crushes on the same gender as well. As years passed by, I started having more same gender crushes and less opposite gender crushes. Now, only about 1 in 4 of my crushes are the opposite gender. Am I gay or bi? And how would I come out safely? I tried to tell my best friend, and now we aren't friends anymore because of that. What should I do? And what may be a cause that I started to suddenly like the same gender? I like how now this person is working out, okay, well, 25% of my crush, and they're very sort of, they're very academic in their study of themselves. So this shows the level of introspection that young people often have. And because of this level of introspection, we can see how important it is to that young person to sort of figure out where they fit. So parents often discount and they say it's not that important. It doesn't really matter. They'll grow out of it, whatever. No, you can see that it's very thoughtful. How can I talk about my sexuality with my parents that aren't supportive of the LGBTQ plus community? So what then does this mean for parents and guardians and trusted adults? Well, your reaction and your engagement regarding sexual and gender identity really, 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 really matters, because your support at home is absolutely vital. Now, in terms of what can you actually do? Like, well, Vanessa, maybe my attitudes are different, maybe my values are different, maybe my opinions are different, maybe there is this ideological disconnect between my young person and my value system, which has sort of long been part of the family's heritage. What can I do? What you need to think is don't minimize the difficulty that this young person is. You've just seen Arjun's perspective. It was difficult. It was a struggle until he began to flourish, when he sort of came out and really embraced who he was. So don't minimize that struggle. Adolescence is hard anyway. And if you have a young person who's really digging deep and doing some searching in regards to their gender or their sexuality, it's a big deal. When you're speaking to them, mirror the emotion that they are showing you. So sometimes as parents, we're having a really great discussion, but it might be in the car. And usually I actually encourage discussions in the car. That parallel sort of talking is fantastic. But when you're having this sort of discussion, you need to look at that person's face and mirror back to them. So if they're looking concerned, mirror back concern. If they're upset, allow yourself to empathize, even to the extent of, because sometimes parents say, oh, I don't want to cry. I don't want them to see that I'm upset. It's okay to mirror that emotion and let your young person know that you are upset for them, not because you're upset about them or because of them, but you're empathizing to such an extent that you're imagining what it's like for them. Be open to possibility. Sometimes we really try to track our kids into a particular channel. And talk about sexuality as fluid, just like other aspects of their personality and their identity, and they're trying things out. But don't insinuate that gender or sexual orientation is a choice. So don't say to them, oh, wow, that's great that you're trying out that particular part of your identity, your sexual identity. It will change. You'll probably just end up like Dad and I. So don't insinuate that, oh, it's a choice. They can just choose what they are. It's not like that. And then articulate your support of your young person. So of the person. You might have an ideological disagreement. Your values might be different, but you are supporting that young person, because if you don't, they will find support elsewhere. because that's what we do as humans, and that's definitely what we do with adolescents. And allow them the freedom. We don't box them in, especially with stereotypes. Don't insist that that your female-bodied child wear, you know, a dress to the wedding that you're going to on the weekend, or, you know, that your male-bodied child wears a suit or whatever. Allow them to express their gender, because part of that will allow them that exploration, but it will also show your support for them. And please speak. You saw, you know, Arjun's mum having that really honest conversation. It's not easy. It wasn't easy for her, I'm sure. She went to the closet. It's difficult. So we really do need to speak with our kids, because we're providing that example. If we don't speak with our young people, they'll think, oh, it's off the table. We've never talked about that before. So clearly my adults don't want to talk to me about that stuff. But if you bring it up, it gives permission for these conversations to happen. And they're not necessarily easy conversations, but at least you've put them on the table, and your young person knows that you're open to having them. And you can admit that you suck at it. That's fine. You'll get better with practice. So ignorance and innocence aren't the same thing. Just because you don't talk about it, just because you don't acknowledge your young person isn't thinking about it, doesn't mean, oh, well, they're innocent, they don't want to know, they, you know, nah, it's not the same thing. Thanks, Charlene. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I do wish you all the best with these conversations, because they're not easy.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for that brilliant contextual setting the stage for us. And, you know, Preeti and Arjun, the chat has been so beautiful. I just want you two to address, Arjun, your parents and the things that they're saying now. I mean, how much has changed? How much is the same? And Preeti, I want you to reflect on all the beautiful things that we're seeing in the chat about your film.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Charlene. I was so moved by Arjun's parents' comments and the support that they have gotten. I just want to say, I mean, there's a question here also, you know, what is your advice for parents who want to be supportive of their children, but are still working through their own feelings? How open should parents be? I mean, I think Anita is such an amazing example of that, because it's very obvious. And I think, you know, for the question, the person who's asked this question too, it's very obvious that there is a lot of love there. And she approached it, even the denying in the beginning came from a place of love. She wanted to protect her child. So I think if you can acknowledge to yourself that you have love for your child and you want to help them, I think that's the biggest thing you can do. And that will lead you to a solution to deal with your own challenging feelings, emotions, stereotypes, you know, because as human beings, we are constantly growing. And as long as we're open to growth and open to supporting the people we love, I think we can, you know, we can work things out and help young people through these experiences and feelings.
Arjun, what say you?
Yeah, I'm just experiencing gratitude. I appreciate all the messages in the chat. I just love that my parents joined this call, because I literally told them about this last night. So it means even more that they made the time, and they are both doctors. And so what's really cool is I'll get articles from my dad about the latest in LGBTQ news. My mom will ask me the best ways to refer to her patients and things like that. So I love that they also feel comfortable now to use me as a resource in their own professional practice, and that journey of my mom is its own journey, and I had my own journey with my dad, and so it's just really cool to be at this place in the journey. So I'm excited for the folks listening to see how they might then evolve with their own journeys.
That's really beautiful, Arjun. I'm the parent of 2 young adults, and when you said your mom was feeling like, why can't you just be normal? You know, that's how parents feel, right? Preeti, I know you had a question for Vanessa.
Yeah, you know, I mean, with Arjun's working on Arjun's film, actually what came up for me is that feeling of, as a parent, you just want your child to be normal. I have so many friends who come to me and they're like, oh, you know, this is happening. And with my own child, one of my kids is atypical. He's twice exceptional, neurodiverse, and I had that own feeling of, oh, maybe he'll just, it'll just be okay. And I think I wanted Vanessa to I wanted to ask you what advice you had for parents who are coming, kind of sensing that their child is unique and, exceptional and different in their own way. And, when we have that resistance to wanting to push them into the mold that we had planned for them, what is the advice that you have for parents?
Yeah, and I think being real like that is the first thing, of acknowledging we all have desires and goals and hopes. And I mean, we love our young people. We love our kids so much that we want them to thrive. But in order for them to thrive, we do have to embrace their difference, because, and now is the best time for someone who, is neurodiverse, or someone who has a diversity of some form, whether it be, special needs, or it's the perfect time, because there's a lot more acceptance. So I don't think now parents will feel as alone as perhaps they would have a few years ago. But parents really have to shelve, in a way, depending on the need, shelve in some way their own goals as the priority. So they're always there. Of course, you always have them. You can't turn them off. And then prioritize the need of their young person. And that is a challenge, because sometimes there might be massive shifts that have to be made. In Fremont, we have a school of the deaf, and I've met parents who have moved state so that their young people can be educated at that, amazing facility. So sometimes there's massive shifts that are required by parents, and if they can make them, then parents are motivated often to do that if it's possible. Other times it's an attitudinal shift, like a reframe of what they wanted for their kid, and now it's like, okay, that might not be able to be, the outcome, but let's really focus on some of those positive things about my young person that might be different to their peers, but could really make them have a direction in their life that is still equally positive. So I think it's about the reprioritizing of our goals as parents to prioritizing the goals of the young person. And if that's, gender or sexual identity, or whether that's dealing with neurodiversity or a disability, then yeah, those shifts have to be made.
Thank you, Vanessa. We have some really brilliant questions coming in here, and I think we'll just turn to some of them, Preeti and Arjun, if that's okay with all of you. Here's a good one. Arjun, I know you mentioned that you were quite feminine presenting when you were younger, long before you knew that gayness existed or that you were gay. Do you feel like your perception of your gender, your expression, changed once you had words to describe it? And how has your relation to your gender changed and your femininity changed over time as you come into your sexuality? I mean, that's a pretty big question.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for asking. I'll try to keep my answer shorter than the question. Just kidding. So I will say that as soon as I noticed I was breaking norms, as I mentioned in the film, it gave me that permission to break norms in other ways. So I think as soon as I realized, oh, I have attraction to maybe more genders than typical people who are my gender, I realized, okay, that's permission to express myself in a way as well that might depart from the norm. So I do think I felt more comfortable being feminine or tapping into a subversion of gender norms once I realized that I was gay. And of course, sexuality or sexual orientation and gender identity are different, and it's not always possible to make assumptions about one based on the other. But like I said, I think that permissiveness was there once I could put words to my sexuality to break norms in other ways. And then for that second part of the question, which was asking about how my relationship to gender has changed, I think going back to that question that Vanessa showed on the question box paper, there is that, what does it actually mean to be a man? Does it mean that I have to be attracted to women? Does it mean that I have to have had vaginal sex? Things like this. And so I have really kind of started to think more broadly about this term man, and also think beyond this term man. So I've never felt a strong connection to that word. And at the same time, I like to think about the elements of man that I get to embody, and also the elements of non-binary, or the elements of woman that I get to embody. Because for a long time, I've had very close friendships with women and an affinity for the things that are feminine. And a lot of my cohort are on this call right now. So shout out to you all.
Awesome. Well, no wonder they're asking such good questions, Arjun. Preeti, I'm curious to know what brought you to name your body of work here, My Body to Love. And then, Arjun, relatedly, in the film, you talk about how it's important to talk openly about bodies in order to have less discrimination. So could you both comment on that piece?
Yeah, this film, well, actually, it started off last year. I started researching a film on body autonomy in the wake of Roe v. Wade falling. And as I started getting deeper into that subject, I realized that it has to start with comprehensive sex ed and open conversations with sexuality. Because as parents, if we are keeping that line of communication open with our kids, it has so many, there's so much benefit that comes from it. And then in talking to young people and my own peers and my own community, I realized two things. One is that young people there is so much anxiety, there is so much stress, there is, it's hard to be young in this day and age with social media. And the second thing is that as parents, even parents, who think, parents like me who are educated, who think of themselves as being, very kind of keeping up to date with, everything that we need to in terms of how to be the most supportive to our kids, do not have a regular diet of education, which is why you are so important. And it's so important for us to keep abreast of research and what's happening and what the best practices are. And I felt like there was need to amplify this space, talking about sex and sexuality, because it is such identity, and who you are is such a big part of, it's such a big part of your mental and physical health. So yes.
Yeah, and then to your question, Charlene, which I believe was basically, what was my thinking when I said that talking about bodies can help us to decrease discrimination? I said that because when it comes to talking about things that are uncomfortable or things that are private, I think we need to normalize that a little bit more. And bodies are one of the most private things, or one of the most personal things, I should say. And so when we get comfort talking about those things that are personal, we then actually normalize talking about other things that might be personal. And I think, as we kind of talked about a little bit in this call, information sharing can be an antidote to discrimination, especially if it is personal information. And so my idea is that if we're talking about bodies, let's say intersex bodies, trans bodies, or just bodies in general, being able to say words like semen or vaginal fluid, these words and these conversations help to normalize talking about what makes us all similar, and also gets us starting to talk about what makes us different in a way that, again, can be an antidote to discrimination, because we learn how to understand other people's experiences that are just their experiences, and we can't really debate them. And then on a more macro level, as soon as we practice that when it comes to talking about bodies, we then can zoom out and talk about race or ethnicity or culture or other things that are also very personal. And we can learn to then interrogate others and understand other experiences, because we have had that practice about talking about bodies.
Thank you, Arjun. So true. And, it's why we have partnered with Vanessa and Health Connected for so many years. Now, probably in Australia, they don't think you have an accent, Vanessa. But we used to tease it. She can say anything, but part of what she taught us, and I think your beautiful film shows, Preeti, is that it's really important to have these talks, even if you are uncomfortable. So here's a question, Vanessa, this one may be for you, and you may have comments, Preeti and Arjun. What is your advice for parents who want to be supportive of their children, but are still working through their own feelings about their child's sexuality and gender?
Yeah, right. And that's fair enough. They also many adults also have their own sexual trauma or their own, how it was modeled to them, talking about sex or sexuality in their past that they've got to work through so that then they can talk to their own children in a healthy, open way. So it's great. That person who asked that question is sort of on the right path, because they're realizing that, oh yeah, I have some work to do first before I can be comfortable. Now, the difficulty then is launching. So that work might have been done. They're ready. They think, yes, I think I can do this now. I'm motivated to do it, but oh my goodness, what do I do? Like, how do I launch that? And I think that's where we use tools like media. So showing a film like we've seen this evening, perfect. And the adults who are here tonight can actually use this as a motivating force, right? Say, oh, I attended this call and there was this awesome film, I want to show it to you, and then launch from that. Or maybe they're watching a show that they watch as a family. And if you're not watching a show as a family, perhaps do, because it does bring out lovely talking points, and use that to just start. And then you can sort of hash out those conversations as you become more practiced. But I absolutely agree with Arjun. We need to speak about bodies. We need to use anatomical terms. We need to talk about attraction, and we need to talk about relationships and sexual violence and all of that stuff. So use media as it comes in, and then launch out to conversations, particularly if you're uncomfortable.
All right, I'm sorry we don't have the opportunity to answer a raised hand, but please do put a question in the Q&A. We have a few more minutes. While we are still together, Preeti, I have a question I want to ask you about the film, and that is, we know that more children and youth today are identifying as LGBTQ. We're being asked to do more programming around that topic. What do you hope that your film will do in supporting queer and questioning youth?
Yeah, I mean, it's like what Vanessa said, and Alfred Adler said this at the beginning of the 20th century. As human beings, we all seek belonging and connection. And I hope if this film inspires adults, to really accept their kids for who they are, no matter what it is, what their gender identity, neurodiversity, accept them for who they are and love them and give them a place in the home where they feel supported, they feel like they belong. I mean, they can take on the world, all other, as Arjun was saying, if we talk openly about bodies and we talk about anatomy and ourselves and our personal experiences, we can reduce discrimination and we can spread that movement. So that's really what I hope will come from this film, that it's a wave of empowerment for young people, for their families, to be open, to be proud, and to really spread just, the more we normalize it, the less it will be something that we have to fear or be scared of.
Oh, so true. I started this program 18 years ago, and this is a topic that we've always covered. But we've seen things really change. It used to be that, and Arjun, this, I'm sure, that families used to be considered the other. Like, parents were not considered part of the solution. And then we listen to your parents tonight and we think, wow, this is a whole new world, right? I mean, we still have a long way to go, but
And I think all parents want to love and protect their children. So even when there's resistance to accepting their child for who they are, it comes from a place of love. Usually, and we can acknowledge that and find a way for them to channel that love in a way that's going to benefit their child. I think, that give them that realization, and I think I love Arjun's mom's story, because Anita shows how you can grow and move from a place of discomfort to acceptance and celebration.
Absolutely. Thank you, Preeti. And that she was just so lovely to hear Anita say that she likes the film even more than she knew she would, right? So we've come to the end of our hour together, but I want to give each of you just a minute to kind of give us your final thoughts. One of the questions that we often ask at the end is, given everything that you know and have experienced, what gives you hope? But again, each of you, just a few final thoughts, if you would. And Vanessa, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so I think it's really that child's interest first, and see the fruit that comes from that, and just take a deep breath, be brave, and launch.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Arjun, how about you?
Yeah, what gives me hope is just how much capacity we have for change. I never thought I would be on a webinar like this the day that I came out to my parents. So the capacity for change gives me hope, and I just invite people to really treat this as a research project. I know parenting is a research project where we're just constantly learning and approaching it from the bottom up. Allow the young person to fill the cup of knowledge and venture forth from there.
That's perfect. I'm going to go tell my children that they're a research project. Preeti, how about you? Final words.
I agree with Arjun. I mean, parenting is kind of, we're thrown into the unknown and we're all experimenting and trying to do our best. So, I mean, it gives me so much hope, because this idea, My Body to Love, was just a little seed of an idea, and it has grown, and, we're here talking about it. And I'm just so excited to see parents wanting to change, to get rid of that discomfort, to be more open, to really, celebrate and embrace their children for whoever they are. And I think we're on the right track. We're making big strides, and I'm excited for the future.
Absolutely. Well, Preeti Mankar Deb and Arjun Sheth and your mom and papa and Vanessa Kellum, thank you everybody for a brilliant conversation and very open and vulnerable one today. We are proud. And we're proud of everybody who is with us and all your kind comments about Preeti's gorgeous film. And let's all stay in touch. We're going to have the link to this film available for a few days, so you can, Preeti, why don't you tell us what the plan is for that link?
Yeah, the link will stay live for 1 week after we share it, after we share the recording. So if you have the link now, you can go ahead and watch it, and then it will be live until about the first week of November or whenever. So yes, please share, watch the film, share it, and it will be the reason we're not sharing it openly is because we haven't yet broadcasted publicly, but it will be broadcast soon, and then I hope that you can use the film to have these conversations. That is the intention.
Okay, thank you. And
I
Bev,
also want to say thank you to you, Charlene and Bev and Parent Venture, for making this happen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
it was an honor, everybody. So thank you again for being with us tonight. Bev has just dropped the link to Preeti's newsletter again in the chat, so do look for that. I think the film link is probably in there too. Take care, everybody. Vanessa, thank you for joining us all the way from home again. Preeti and Arjun, it was just a delight. So take care, everybody. We hope to see you again soon. Good night.